I finished checking the documents. There were some typos and errors in the content, so I corrected them with a red pen, I said as I handed the papers over. Risa, the Mayor David's daughter, who had been talking to her father, looked at the returned documents and exclaimed, "What? You did this in such a short time? Wow, it's covered in red." She shifted her gaze to the papers I'd returned. Reviewing 3 pages of documents in about 10 minutes seemed like quite a feat to most people, but for me, it was a familiar and one of my few areas of expertise. She spent a while examining the documents before looking up, her stunning face, one that had graced the world of modeling, turning to me with a plea that far exceeded anything I could have ever imagined. Her request would become the turning point that would profoundly change my life. "My name is Sean. I'm a government worker currently living in a remote, mountainous area with a sparse population. Compared to other rural towns, the population density here is particularly low. The staff at the town office are worlds apart from those I worked with in the city of over 100,000 people where I used to live. I was transferred here 6 months ago because one of the town office employees abruptly resigned, creating an urgent need for reinforcements from other towns. This rural town hall, which struggles with a lack of personnel, operates completely differently from my previous workplace. While I excelled in exams, I've always found it challenging to communicate effectively and understand others' intentions. Ever since childhood, I've frequently been told to listen to others and not rush to conclusions. For example, when someone talks about what to eat for dinner, I tend to quickly propose a place based on my preferences or theirs. However, this approach often fails to engage the other person, making the conversation uninteresting and leaving the impression that I don't really listen. Though I've tried to heed the advice to listen until the end, I can't help blurting out my conclusions as soon as I arrive at one, reverting to my usual habit. In the city hall where I previously worked, I was mainly assigned desk work, with minimal interaction with others. Preparing materials according to manuals and following predefined procedures were my strengths. And above all, I appreciated the lack of frequent conversations. However, at this town office, I have to juggle both clerical tasks and counter services, with nearly 70% of the population being elderly. Residents come to the town office daily with various needs, especially in the morning. Some even get upset with me when I rush to conclusions, making each day mentally exhausting. While my colleagues, superiors, and the Mayor David encourage me without scolding, their kindness only amplifies my sense of inadequacy. Meanwhile, my parents back home increasingly urge me via calls, emails, and even letters to settle down as I'm nearing 30. But how can someone like me, who finds conversations so draining, possibly get married? As I sighed over my daily struggles, a familiar figure approached through the automatic doors of the town hall. "Hello. Is Dad here? I'd like to submit this," she said, showing a file of documents as she walked up to the counter. It was Risa, David's daughter. I had heard she left town after graduating high school and returned shortly after I started working here. According to the office ladies, Risa had moved to the city, working part-time while attending numerous auditions until she established herself as a fashion model. With her long, chestnut-dyed hair, almond-shaped eyes, and slender figure, she looked as if she had stepped right out of a fashion magazine. Even though she was wearing wide-legged pants, her waistline hinted at just how incredibly long her legs must be. Risa flashed a friendly smile and called out toward the back of the town office. "Dad, I brought the documents." Hearing her voice, David came hurrying out of a back room. "You finally got it ready?" "Sean, Could you take a look at this? He said, handing me the documents Risa had brought. Risa, seeing this, puffed out her cheeks. Hey, isn't it awful to dump work on your staff? I only brought these because you asked me to. David sighed and replied, it's best to leave it to Sean. By the way, Risa, how much longer do you plan on staying in this jack-of-all-trades business? Since returning to town, Risa had been working as a sort of local handyman, primarily running errands for the elderly. Her job involved taking on physically demanding tasks that were difficult for seniors, especially those who were no longer able to drive. Though she mostly served the elderly, she accepted requests from others as well, making her a well-known figure in town. Are we doing this again? Another lecture about how families and neighbors should help each other instead of charging money for it. Listen, by charging a fee, I take responsibility for the work people ask me to do. My clients have said it themselves, they feel bad asking for help, and it's awkward to pay someone they know. But when it's me, they don't have to feel guilty or worry about imposing. As I reviewed the documents, I listened to Risa's reasoning. Her argument made sense, and based on the occasional comments I'd overheard from town residents at the office, her service seemed well accepted. The idea of helping each other in times of need was deeply ingrained in this community, but at the same time, many of its residents were modest and hesitant to ask for help. This became evident in the conversations I had with the people who visited the office. For elderly residents, even when they wanted to rely on their neighbors, they often worried about unnecessary complications. What should they give as thanks? Should it be cash? If so, how much is appropriate? The residents of this town were kind-hearted and willing to help without expecting anything in return. But for those asking for help, the desire to maintain good relations without feeling burdensome was likely important. That's why Risa's business model had a clear demand, and her contributions to the community were significant. Though it looked like the father and daughter were about to continue arguing, I focused on my work. There were quite a few typos and errors. I've corrected them all in red. Also, the attached map is outdated, as are the evacuation routes listed for the event. I've updated those in red as well, I said, handing the heavily marked up documents back to Risa. David, seeing the state of the papers, sighed in exasperation. See, I told you it's best to leave it to Sean. He's incredibly fast at checking documents. If you want to stay active in the volunteer fire brigade, you'll need to get your paperwork in order. Risa brushed off David's scolding with a smile and turned to me. You fixed all this in such a short time. That's amazing. I feel so embarrassed for making so many mistakes. Sorry for the trouble, she said, sticking out her tongue playfully and giving me a small bow. Although she was about my age and carried a mature, beautiful aura, gestures like this made her seem almost childlike. Oh no, it's really not, I stammered, as I hesitated, unsure of how to respond. Risa's eyes lit up with excitement. I know, Sean, you should join the fire brigade. There aren't enough young people, and it's honestly worrying. Come on, please. She looked back and forth between me and David, her enthusiasm evident. Apparently, Risa was already a member of the town's fire brigade. I later learned that the brigade only had 15 members, all of whom, except for Risa, were men over the age of 50. David, seemingly prepared for this conversation, turned to me and said, Sean, would you consider joining? It's a bit of a hassle administratively since you're a public employee, but I can handle that. We've been in desperate need of younger members. Many of the parents of school-age children in the town were my age or younger, but most of them worked outside the town and didn't have the time to participate in fire brigade activities. I'll admit, The idea felt inconvenient, but before I could say anything, Risa clasped her hands in front of her face and said, "Please, Sean. You saw the state of those documents, right? I can be kind of scatterbrained, and I need someone reliable to help me." Faced with her earnest plea, I couldn't help but smile wryly. "All right. If there's something I can do to help, I'll do it," I said, deciding to join the fire brigade. And so I became both a town hall employee and a fire brigade member. While most people think the fire brigade's main job is firefighting, they also engage in activities during quieter times. For example, the disaster preparedness event Risa was planning was part of the brigade's responsibilities. By the way, I started calling her by her first name after our first day of brigade activities when she said, "Call me Risa." Our first task together was delivering flyers to homes of elderly residents, highlighting safety tips for disaster preparedness. The town office had similar initiatives, but Risa said, "You can never do too much of this. Some people might forget the last time they heard it." Right? She insisted on going through with it. Risa had designed the flyers herself, but like the documents she brought to the office, they were riddled with typos and incorrect information. I ended up redoing them. I was grateful she asked me to check the content before making a large number of copies. Now I understand why Dad always makes you check documents. You're amazing. Everything is so perfect when you do it. Sorry for relying on you so much. I guess it runs in the family." Risa joked with an exaggerated apology. To me, it wasn't a burden or a source of stress. I was simply doing what I could. When we delivered the flyers to elderly residents, I saw how warmly they responded to Risa. Not only did she share the disaster preparedness tips from the flyers, but she also took on handyman tasks during her visits. From delivering vegetables to a neighbor over 3 miles away, to repairing a broken fence around someone's garden, Risa accepted every request with a smile. Naturally, since I was accompanying her, I ended up helping out too. As a public employee, unlike Risa, I couldn't accept any payment for my efforts. It was purely voluntary, yet I didn't mind at all. It was likely because I got to see Risa interact with the locals. Her cheerful demeanor and genuine enjoyment of the work lighting up every encounter. When we finished visiting all the houses on our list, Risa turned to me and said, "Let me repay you for helping with the handyman jobs." But for the reasons I'd explained earlier, I declined any payment. Risa's eyes widened in surprise. "Sean, you're so serious. But maybe that's why you became a government employee. In that case, why don't you come over to my place for dinner? No strings attached. No work payment involved, just a meal. That's fair, right?" Her suggestion was so earnest that I couldn't refuse. From that day onward, it became a habit for me to have dinner at Risa's house after fire brigade activities. Risa didn't live at her family home, but rented a house closer to the town center. She explained that living at her family home on the outskirts of town was inconvenient for work. Although I initially felt awkward visiting a single woman's home, Risa seemed completely unfazed. "Today, it's orange chicken," she announced cheerfully, bringing out dish after dish of homemade food. Having cooked almost all her meals herself during her modeling days to maintain her figure, Risa's dishes were not only delicious but also perfectly balanced nutritionally. "This is the complete opposite of my cooking," I remarked. "I just throw random ingredients into a pot and call it a meal." Risa blushed slightly at the compliment. "That makes me so happy to hear. I'm not used to cooking for others, so this feels fresh and exciting. Here, have some seconds," she said, embarrassed yet eager to serve more. As we continued our fire brigade activities, Risa occasionally shared stories about her past during dinner. You've probably heard I used to be a model, right? I was actually pretty well known back then. I mean, I'm tall, have long legs, and my face isn't half bad, right? She said this with a smile that made my heart skip a beat. It wasn't just any smile, it was the kind of dazzling, professional smile that once captivated the world. Even though I'm not great at listening to people's stories, Risa's energy and quick pace left me with no opportunity to interrupt, which helped me avoid my usual habit of rushing conversations to their conclusions. About a year ago, I fell down the stairs at the studio where I was doing a shoot. I broke my leg. Maybe it's easier to show you than explain, she said. Risa briefly disappeared into another room and came back, dressed in shorts instead of the wide-legged pants she had been wearing. She pointed to her left leg. What should have been a straight line was now visibly bent outward, the shape clearly altered. I can walk again, but my leg ended up deformed. And while I was recovering, someone else took my spot. I returned to work once, but I overheard the staff discussing how to hide the shape of my leg during shoots. That's when I realized my time as a model was over, and I decided to leave. It's embarrassing, isn't it? I left this rural town because I hated it, dreaming big, only to come back with nothing to show for it. Though she laughed while telling her story, her voice trembled ever so slightly. Even I could imagine the immense pain and struggles she must have faced in reaching that decision. I stood up, faced her directly, and firmly declared, "I don't think that's embarrassing at all." Risa looked startled by my sudden conviction, but I couldn't hold back. "Seeing you run around tirelessly for the people in this town, Risa, I think that's amazing. There are so many things we at the town office can't manage, but people can come to you. I'm sure there are plenty of people who feel reassured knowing they can rely on you." The smiles of the elderly when they talk to you prove that, though it had only been about 3 months since I started working alongside Risa as a member of the fire brigade, one thing was clear: she had already become an indispensable part of the town. Whether my words reached her or not, Risa suddenly sat down on the floor. "Thank you. That means so much to me," she said, wiping at her eyes as her voice broke. But almost immediately, she put on her usual playful smile and said, "Hey, that's not fair. You can't just say something like that out of nowhere. I'm getting more emotional with age. You know." She teased, lightening the mood once again. The season transitioned into autumn, and the lush green scenery surrounding the town began turning shades of red. One afternoon, Risa walked into the town office lobby with a woman in her 30s. The woman's name was Emily, if I remembered correctly. She had attended one of the disaster preparedness workshops organized by the fire brigade, which is why her name stuck in my memory. Breathing heavily, Risa and Emily approached the counter. Emily's child, Huey, got lost in the mountains and can't find his way back, Risa explained. Emily clutched her mobile phone tightly. Apparently, Huey had just called her, asking for help. People from the office began gathering around. They had already contacted the police, but Emily and Risa had rushed here, desperate to see if there was anything else they could do in the meantime. "If Huey has a phone, can we check his location using it?" I suggested, but Emily shook her head. Huey's phone was a budget model that didn't have GPS or location sharing capabilities. It only allowed basic functions like texting and taking photos. "Huey, it's okay. Help is on the way," Emily reassured him over the phone. The police had instructed them to stay put, warning that inexperienced people searching could lead to further accidents. However, the nearest rescue team was still some time away, and everyone was growing increasingly anxious. I racked my brain, searching for an alternative, and then an idea struck me. "Excuse me, Could you ask Huey to take some pictures of his surroundings and send them to us? We might be able to figure out where he is." Emily immediately passed on my instructions to Huey. A few minutes later, 5 photos came through. All of them were of generic mountain scenery, nothing particularly distinctive at first glance. But as soon as I saw the images, fragments of my memory began piecing themselves together. After examining them for about a minute, I figured it out. Huey should be around here. Please let the police know this location. I pointed to a spot on the map and announced. Risa, looking puzzled, asked, "How do you know he's there?" I stared at one of the photos and explained, "For bird conservation, there are several artificial bird houses installed in the forest. You can see some of them in the pictures. By analyzing the angle and the type of trees where the bird houses are located, I narrowed down the area. I remember where those bird houses are because I explored the forest before, so I'm certain this is the right place." I quickly prepared my gear and looked around at the gathered staff. "I'm going to find Huey. Please wait here," I said firmly as I turned to leave. Just then, Risa grabbed my arm tightly. Startled, I looked back at her. She gave me her usual energetic smile and said, "I'm coming too. My work as a handywoman has made me strong and fit." Before I could respond, she dashed ahead of me, leading the way. 30 minutes after entering the forest, Risa and I found Huey crouched near a tree. He must have been terrified, spending time alone in the woods as darkness began to set in. The moment he saw us, he burst into tears and ran straight into Risa's arms. Huey had wandered deep into the mountains, far from town. If we hadn't pinpointed his location, finding him would have been extremely difficult. When we returned with Huey, the townspeople greeted us with applause. However, the police sternly scolded us. They had warned us not to go, citing the risk of secondary casualties, so it was only natural for them to be upset. But after the police left, Risa sidled up to me and whispered, "Sean, that was so cool of you." Her words made my heart race. 3 hours after the rescue, I was at home, sipping on some juice while feeling a mix of exhaustion and fulfillment. If I could drink alcohol, I would have happily toasted to the day. But since I couldn't, juice had to suffice. I was just about to start preparing for bed when I heard the front door open, and Risa's voice called out, "Sean, are you still up?" Without waiting for my reply, Risa walked into my house, casually dressed in jeans and a t-shirt. "You keep your place pretty clean, huh? Here, I brought you something." She handed me a plastic bag filled with snacks. Her face was flushed, likely from drinking. I quickly prepared a cushion for her to sit on, and as she plopped down, she said, "Emily and Huey were so grateful to you. The police might have been mad, but to Huey, you're a hero, and I still can't believe you figured out his location from just those photos. That's amazing." She praised my actions with enthusiasm. I told her how I've always enjoyed looking at maps since I was a kid, often using them to explore different places. I'd been to the forest where Huey got lost before, so the scenery in the photos looked familiar. My strong memory and the high spatial awareness I'd once been tested on were what helped me determine Huey's location. As I explained, Risa sat up, hugging her knees, and said, "Sean, you really are special. I thought so ever since that time you helped me fix those documents. I wonder if I could have done more with my life if I were special like you. I used to have confidence in my looks, but with my leg the way it is now, I can't be a model anymore." Her voice trailed off, sounding uncharacteristically subdued. Her usual cheerful demeanor seemed to vanish, replaced by a quieter, more introspective side. It was disorienting to see her like this, but at the same time, I thought this might be the real Risa. someone who had lost her sense of identity and couldn't find value in herself, hiding behind the mask of a cheerful, upbeat persona. The fact that she felt comfortable enough to show this side to me meant she trusted me, or so I thought. Maybe I was just being conceited. Regardless, if Risa was feeling down, I wanted to cheer her up. With that in mind, I grabbed my phone, opened a certain webpage, and showed it to her. This is. Risa's wide-open eyes reflected the homepage I had secretly created for her handyman business upon her request. Risa had a habit of taking two-shot photos with her clients. I had quietly added a hidden section to the website, where I stored all the two-shot photos she had taken. Over 100 photos were a testament to all the people Risa had helped in this town. As I said before, Risa, you're a special person to everyone in this town. I wanted you to realize that, so I secretly created this space. It's not about special abilities or anything like that, Risa. You're the real hero for the people here. At my words, Risa covered her face with her hands and nodded repeatedly. When she turned her back to me, it seemed like she might be crying. Not knowing what to say, I remained silent for a while. Then, Risa wiped her face with a tissue and stared at me. Even with tears, her delicate features were so beautiful that she could have been a leading actress in a movie or drama. As I tried my best not to avert my gaze, Risa let out a slow breath. You always know how to say the nicest things. Then, can you answer just one question for me? What am I to you? I understood the words, but I couldn't grasp the intent behind her question. Confused and dumbfounded, I didn't respond. Risa gave her eye smile and said, "Sorry, I guess that was unclear. What I mean is I want to be someone special to you, Sean. No one else, just you." Saying this, she wrapped her slender arms around me. Her breath tickled my ear, and I caught the sweet scent of her perfume and shampoo. My heart raced, and my body stiffened. Then, she whispered softly into my ear, "You didn't treat me like I was fragile, and that made me so happy. Ever since I injured my leg and came back here, everyone's been a little distant. They might rely on me, but I can feel a wall between us compared to how it used to be. They probably think of me as a poor girl who failed in the city. But you, Sean, you were different. You looked at me head on and saw me for who I really am, without any prejudice. Because of your encouragement, I've been able to keep going. Driving you along for volunteer work and handyman jobs on weekends was just my excuse to spend more time with you. I love you so much that I want to stay like this forever." Having always struggled with expressing myself to others, I hadn't noticed her feelings until now. But Risa had shown her affection so clearly. Gathering all the courage I could, I responded with my own feelings. Being with you has become such a natural part of my life. Even earlier, when I heard your voice from the doorway, I felt genuinely happy. I'm still not fully sure what this feeling is, but I think it must be love. So, can I ask something too? Will you go out with me? As I pulled her closer and held her shoulder, Risa pressed her slender frame against me and whispered sweetly, "I'm so happy." As a couple, Risa and I decided to support the lives of the town's people through both the town hall and her handyman services. She would relay complaints and requests she heard from the townsfolk, which I would then share with the town hall for use in policy making. This approach was well received at the town hall, as it provided insights into areas they couldn't reach on their own. 1 year after we started dating, Risa and I decided to get married. Known as the town's official couple, our wedding became a huge event celebrated by the entire community. I'm so glad I came back. After all, I got to meet you, Sean. After the wedding, back at the house where we'd begin our life together, Risa changed into casual clothes and sat beside me, taking my arm. Since we started dating, she no longer tried to hide her left leg. I feel the same. Looking back, I'm grateful for my transfer here. Let's rest well tonight since we've got a long trip ahead of us tomorrow. For our honeymoon, we plan to take a road trip across the country. As I thought about all the new sights we'd see together, I silently vowed to build a happy life with Risa.
I got pregnant with Richard's child. What? So please divorce him and leave. Please. What are you saying out of the blue? Please. My sister Sophia dropped this bombshell, then went on to demand a divorce. The shock of her being pregnant was one thing, but I never expected her to plead for a divorce. But if she thought I knew nothing, she was gravely mistaken. At this point, an idea struck me. If you want the divorce so badly, I have conditions. Conditions? They can't be that bad, so fine. Really? I taunted my sister. Sophia, ever the competitive one, showed a confident attitude. Just as I had planned. This won't be easy, you know. However, Sophia didn't realize. This condition would be a burden she'd carry for a lifetime. I took a deep breath, looked her straight in the eyes, and said firmly, "Divorce is fine, but you'll have to take care of the 3 daughters I've raised." I don't get it. Why should I? They're your kids, right? Technically, I'm not their biological mother. They're stepchildren. That's not it. Because those 3 kids. I knew the truth Richard and Sophia had been hiding all this time. Thinking about how I've raised these 3 daughters, the emotions surged. Given how things had turned out, Sophia would have to atone for all her sins. I was filled with an unprecedented level of hatred. Don't say something so random. Should I show you the evidence then? Show me. And thus, Sophia stepped into her own personal hell. My name is Isabella, a 43-year-old housewife. I met my husband, Richard, at our previous workplace. We were the same age and joined the company at the same time. I want to talk to you about something, so can we go out for a drink? If you're paying. Again? Fine. You owe me for all the help I give you. Initially, we were just colleagues and friends. I even gave Richard advice on his love life. When Richard went through a breakup, our bond deepened quickly. I'll help you next time. What are you saying? I did it because I wanted to, don't worry. Oh, by the way. At that time, I didn't have romantic feelings, but seeing Richard heartbroken, I realized I loved him. I acted quickly after that. Feeling a bit guilty, I confessed my feelings to Richard. It worked out, and we started dating. Time passed, and we married in our 2nd summer together. Let's make this work. Yeah, let's build a great family. Yes. It might be early, but I want 2 kids. Our relationship was strong, and I wasn't too worried about starting a new life. But I never imagined my family would interfere. The cause was my sister, Sophia. What? It's no big deal. Give it to me. It's not fair for Isabella to have it. Not fair? I bought this myself, you can get your own. As my sister, it's natural for you to give it to me. Saying this, Sophia would take my newly bought cosmetics without permission. Inviting Sophia to our new house was clearly a mistake. Sophia always wanted everything I had, even from childhood. This never changed, even as we grew up. Hold on a second. See you, Isabella. Next time, be careful not to lose something even more important. What do you mean? Well, why don't you figure it out yourself? Even though we've known each other since we were kids, I've only ever scolded her. Annoying as she is, she is still my sister by blood. And such lenient thoughts would lead to an irreversible situation. You did it. Yeah. We'll have a new family member soon, so we need to work harder. For years after we got married, we had our first child. Because of this, I resigned and became a housewife. However, 6 months later, something devastating happened. I had been suffering from stomach pain since the morning, and it was so bad that I called an ambulance. What does that mean? I'm sorry, but you've had a miscarriage. No way! We did everything we could. I couldn't think of anything. I didn't even know how I got home. I couldn't figure out how to tell Richard. I'm home. Oh, welcome back. What's with that face? Yeah. Richard must have sensed my distress because he gently asked, "Take your time and tell me, okay?" His words made me feel safe, and I burst into tears, explaining what had happened today. Richard was shocked, but he told me it wasn't my fault. It'll be all right. Thank you. Let's just take it easy for now. After some time, we started trying for a baby again, but I still couldn't get pregnant. Further hospital tests revealed that I had a condition that made it difficult to conceive and prone to miscarriages. It felt like I was sinking deeper into a pit of despair. To make matters worse, a troublesome person started visiting frequently. I'm sorry about your loss, Isabella. Yeah. But don't worry, it's not the end yet. I hope so. And, actually, I need to ask you a favor. Sophia never hesitates to ask me for things. Even though she knows my current situation, she doesn't care. Her seemingly concerned words are empty. So, what's the favor? Oh, can you lend me some money? What? I'm in a bit of trouble, just a little will do. I thought it was too much trouble, so I handed her the $300 in my wallet. Well, this should do. By the way, where's Richard? He went out to meet a friend. Okay. Thanks. See you. With that, Sophia left. After this, she stopped coming to our house. Peaceful days followed. Then, Richard made a proposal. I was thinking, how about we adopt a child? Adopt? I was stunned by his sudden suggestion. Although we hadn't had a child, it didn't mean it was completely impossible. I think it might be better than betting on such a low chance. You might be right. Of course, we don't have to do it right away, but I'd like you to think about it. Oh, okay. I was very conflicted. I understood Richard's point, but I still couldn't give up on having our own child. In the end, I spent about a month thinking it through. I waited for Richard to come home and shared my thoughts about adopting a child. What do you think? I thought about it, and maybe you're right. Even if there's no blood connection, the child will still be ours. Yeah, you're right. And I'll take care of all the paperwork. Really? Thank you. Richard's eyes were filled with hope. Thus, Richard and I adopted a child. Her name was Emily, about 2 years old, and she was a very understanding and good child. Around the same time, Sophia started visiting us again. I had no idea where she had been or what she had been doing, but it seemed she was back to asking for things and money again. You adopted a child, didn't you? Since you couldn't have one of your own, it worked out well, right? Yes. But how do you know about that? Sophia looked uneasy. Huh? Oh, I just happened to run into Richard the other day, and he mentioned it. Sophia was fiddling with her earlobe, not looking at me at all. I knew. This was how Sophia acted when she was lying. Really? Where did you meet him? Where was it again? I'll ask Richard about it later then. Does it even matter? She clearly tried to change the subject. Her desperation made me think she had been in touch with Richard for a long time. "Oh, is this a limited edition item? I got that for my birthday the other day." "Give it to me." "Were you listening to me?" "Of course I was. But it doesn't matter to me. I'm your sister, so it's fine, right? Just get another one." "Hey! Don't touch that." I tried to take the makeup Sophia had grabbed from her. But she resisted, and we both fell to the floor. At that moment, Richard came home. "What are you doing?" "This is. Are you okay?" "Huh?" Richard went straight to Sophia without even glancing at me. "How did this happen?" Sophia gave me a sly smile. "I just wanted to look at Isabella's makeup, but she told me not to touch it. I just wanted to see it." "What? What are you talking about? Did you really do that?" "No, Maybe she thought I was going to steal it." "Did you really think that about Sophia?" Richard didn't listen to me and believed Sophia instead. In the end, the makeup Richard had given me as a gift ended up in Sophia's hands. And then I was sure. Richard and Sophia were much closer than I had thought. I was blamed, and Sophia left with a triumphant look on her face. "Don't ever do something like that again." "But that was..." "I don't want to hear any excuses." "No, really. It doesn't matter." "Huh? Just get along with Sophia, okay?" Richard took Sophia's side without even listening to me. And then, an incident triggered my desire for revenge against Richard and Sophia. Our marriage deteriorated because of Sophia. We barely talked anymore, and the only thing that kept me going was Emily. Even at her young age, Emily seemed to worry about me and would stay by my side even when she had nothing specific to do. "Mom, are you okay?" "Thank you, I'm fine." "Good." But even Emily started to talk less. Sometimes she wouldn't even respond when I called out to her. And then I realized. Before Emily started acting distant, Sophia had been coming over. She might have said something unnecessary to Emily. That suspicion never went away. Years passed. "I'm home." When I came home, there were unfamiliar shoes in the entrance. They were quite small, seemingly a child's shoes. They weren't Emily's. I had a bad feeling and rushed into the house. "Welcome back." "Huh? Who's that kid?" "A new member of our family." "What are you talking about?" For a moment, my mind went blank and I felt dizzy. "Hey, are you okay?" "Yeah. Can you explain what's going on?" "We adopted a new child." "Why did you do that without telling me?" "Hey, don't raise your voice." I was overwhelmed by feelings that words couldn't describe. I couldn't understand why he had done this. "Why?" "Well, I thought Emily might be lonely on her own. And Emily seems happy about it too." Richard answered with a smile. But now that the child was here, we couldn't send them back. And so, our life began with mixed feelings. That alone would have been fine, but 2 years later, something else happened. By this time, I was already 40 years old. "No way!" After visiting my parents' home for the first time in a while and coming back, there was another unfamiliar child. "Is that child also adopted?" "Yes, you're right." It was the third one. Just when we were getting used to living as a family of 4. Another addition to our family. While it sounds like a happy thing, the circumstances were not normal. Moreover, Richard was pleased with himself, thinking he was doing a good thing. "Let's get along from now on." Thus, our new life with 5 people began. Watching the 3 daughters, they seemed like real sisters. Their faces even looked somewhat similar. This realization hit me again when Sophia visited. Long time no see, Isabella. Yes, indeed. I braced myself. Whenever she came over, it was usually to ask for something. But this time was different. Instead of asking me for something, she actively engaged with the girls. Her usual high-handed attitude was replaced with eyes full of affection. Oh, I see. I realized the source of the strange feeling I'd been having about the three daughters. They looked like Sophia. Their eyes and features were strikingly similar. What's wrong? When I look at the girls, they remind me of Sophia. Looking at them like this, they seem more like her children than yours. Richard showed a surprised expression, but he covered it up by making a snide remark to me. I just thought so when you mentioned it. Do you have a problem with that? Not really. Richard's reaction stayed in my mind. And Sophia started coming over every week, taking care of the girls in my place. 3 more years passed, and I was 43. As usual, Sophia was visiting and chatting with the girls. They all touched their earlobes. Huh? I noticed they all have the same habit. Really? Isn't that normal? Here, a thought crossed my mind. It wouldn't be strange if the children were Sophia's. A few days later, I couldn't stop thinking about it, as if I were under a curse. To resolve this, I decided to take action without telling anyone. What are you doing over there? Oh, just cleaning. Over there? Yeah. Well, okay, but hurry up and make dinner. Yeah. I was looking for my daughter's hair. It was absolutely necessary. No one should notice. And I also needed to get Sophia's hair. I had never wanted Sophia to come over as much as I did now. Welcome. Sophia came over the next weekend. You're in a good mood, aren't you? Really? I feel the same as usual. I managed to get Sophia's hair as well. It was the time I thought I was ready. Just to be sure, I decided to get Richard's hair too. Then I sent them to a research agency. The cost wasn't cheap, but this time it couldn't be helped. The results arrived after a month. Sophia came over looking different than usual. I have Richard's child. What? So please get a divorce and leave. What are you saying out of the blue? Please. I was shocked that she was pregnant, but I never expected her to ask for a divorce. But if she thought I knew nothing, she was gravely mistaken. At this point, an idea struck me. If you want the divorce so badly, I have conditions. Conditions? They can't be that bad, so fine. Really? I provoked Sophia. Sophia, not one to back down, acted confidently. This was exactly what I intended. There's no way I'll do that. But Sophia didn't understand. This condition would be something she would carry for the rest of her life. I took a deep breath, looked Sophia straight in the eye, and said, "Divorce is fine, but in return, take care of the 3 daughters we've raised." I don't understand. Why would I? They're your children. Technically, they aren't biologically mine. Well, they're adopted. That's not what I mean. The truth is, the 3 children are. Just then, Richard came home from work. I'm home. What's going on? Richard's reaction made me think how deceitful he was. Sophia says she's pregnant with your child. Oh, do you realize what you've done? Well, Richard was visibly shaken. From his reaction, it seemed he didn't know Sophia was pregnant. Did you not know? I just found out now. I didn't know she was pregnant. Really? But whether Richard knew or not didn't matter to me. That wasn't the important part. So, about the 3 children, I know the truth. If you're going to say something, now is the time. I looked back and forth between Richard and Sophia. What do you know? Richard seemed to understand what I was about to say. Wait a minute. No need to wait, right? I'll just say it. The true parent of these 3 children is? Huh? I don't know. I wasn't told. Is that so? But that's a lie, isn't it? The real parent of the children is you, isn't it? I pointed at Sophia. What do they think raising these 3 daughters has been like? Given the circumstances, Sophia would have to atone for her actions, including what she had done so far. My heart was filled with more hatred than I had ever felt before. Don't say random things. Then, how about I show you some proof? Show me. And so, Sophia took a step into hell. Wait a minute. I brought out something I had kept in the bedroom drawer. I showed it to both of them. I had ordered a DNA test for the children and Sophia a while ago. The results showed that they were parent and child. How about this? There's no way you can talk your way out of this. That's... Sophia tried to make excuses even after seeing the evidence. But once it was scientifically proven, there was no escape for her. How could you think of something like this? Were you willing to give up your own daughters just to spite me? Then Sophia began to speak about what she had been holding in her heart all this time. Of course. From a young age, Isabella was always the one getting praised, while I was constantly called a failure. Indeed, Sophia was right. But that was only the opinion of shallow-minded adults who couldn't see beyond the surface. In reality, our parents never said anything like that. That was from unrelated people. Our family never said such things, not even once. That's a lie. Sophia seemed to recall something. When I was graduating from high school, Sophia had expressed a desire to go to college. A few years before that, I was also thinking about going to college. But financially, only one of us could afford to go. Our parents decided to prioritize me since I was the older sibling. Did you remember? I chose to get a job instead of going to college. But why would you do that? Because I knew you could do it if you tried. Your behavior got a bit out of hand because of the people around you. Sophia was capable, she just didn't apply herself. So, I did all this out of misguided resentment. That can't be. You were just running wild and misunderstood everything. Then why didn't you tell me sooner? Even if I told you the truth, you wouldn't have believed it. Sophia, losing her earlier confidence, fell silent. She probably didn't want to admit that everything she had done was due to a misunderstanding. That realization had led her astray. With Sophia already defeated, I needed to talk to Richard. Now it's your turn. I didn't know, so it has nothing to do with me. Richard tried to leave, but I grabbed his arm to stop him. Are you trying to run away? That's not it. Then sit down and listen. I made Richard sit on the sofa and continued. About the children, you're their father, aren't you? What? How did you come to that conclusion? You saw the exchange earlier, right? I got curious and had your hair tested. The results were as I expected. Huh? Did you think I wouldn't find out? Too bad. You might fool others, but it's too early to think you could fool me. Since Richard brought the children into our home, his behavior had been strange. More importantly, Sophia looked at the children with a mother's gaze. Even if I assumed all the children Sophia brought in were her own daughters, it was too much of a coincidence. I suspected Richard had some involvement, but I never thought he was the father. Do you have anything to say? Nothing, right? What do you plan to do now? Just as Sophia said, I'll divorce you. It's a clear case of infidelity, but I don't need any settlement money. I see. In exchange, you'll take full custody of the children. All of them? All three? Yes, all three. Are you okay with that? I always tried to raise them as if they were my real daughters. Even though they sometimes ignored me, they were still my precious girls. But my mind was made up. Of course, I feel lonely, but it's better for them to live with their real parents. They'll be happier. I had vowed to take revenge, so I couldn't do things halfway. The anger from being deceived for years couldn't be erased easily. Besides, I already have the divorce papers ready. Just for times like this. It was unexpected when Sophia told me she was pregnant, but I saw it as a chance. Are you serious? I'm serious. So hurry up and sign here, will you? And, of course, you don't have the option not to sign. So I made Richard sign the papers right then and there. I wanted to get the divorce papers and leave as soon as possible. Well, I'll make sure these get submitted. Are you leaving? Don't ask the obvious. I can't stay here anymore. You two can do whatever you like now. Just then, Sophia, who had been in despair moments before, spoke up. Isabella, wait a minute. I'm sorry for everything. I sighed. This is what you wanted, isn't it? I'm not involved anymore. No way. Isn't it? After giving up the kids, now you want to be with Richard? That's too convenient. Don't worry, they're all your daughters now. Sophia had gone so far as to put their own children in a facility just to trouble me. That's something no parent should do. She would face the consequences. I left the house with those words. It was raining outside, but my heart felt clear. After leaving, I headed to my parents' home. We hadn't been in touch much, but this time I had no choice. When I explained the situation, even my parents sighed. So, what are you going to do now? For now, I'll move somewhere. And I need to find a job. How about I ask Dad? I think he mentioned someone looking for help. Really? That would be great. All right, let's talk when he gets home. After that, I spent peaceful days at my parents' home. 3 days later, Richard contacted me. I was expecting it. Hey, help me out. What? It's been a mess since you irresponsibly left. What are you talking about? Those kids are yours, so deal with it. They haven't warmed up to me since you left. Sophia is with you, right? Yeah, but... I couldn't tolerate his selfish behavior any longer. Figure it out yourselves. Don't call me again. I hung up and went to see my lawyer before submitting the divorce papers. I initially told Richard the first wouldn't ask for a settlement, but I decided to make him understand my position. After all, he deceived me and then had the nerve to complain, so I wouldn't hold back anymore. Then, I got a call from Sophia. The police came by the other day. I don't know anything about that. It must have been you. Well, you deserved it. Putting your own daughters in a facility was a stupid thing to do. The future awaiting Sophia was unimaginable. Thus, I began living alone. I got a job through Dad's introduction, and everything has just begun. I was alone, but filled with hope. I'm fine with whatever. Do whatever you want. What? That's not helpful at all. My husband, Thomas, and I were at a meeting to discuss our wedding ceremony. We had already submitted our marriage license, but we hadn't held the ceremony yet. Even though I was listening with growing excitement, my enthusiasm quickly faded. For now, why not go with this? What do you mean by this? I mean, the middle plan should be fine. Didn't you say it could be something a little nicer? Thomas was the one who suggested having a ceremony in the first place. But now, his attitude was unbelievable. As the tension grew, our wedding planner, Nichols, made a suggestion. In that case, the quality of the meal could be reduced a bit, and instead, we could increase the number of events. Nichols explained the alternative plan politely, but Thomas showed no interest. Let's go with that. Is that okay with you? Yeah. I almost sighed but held it back. Then suddenly, he stood up. Where are you going? We're not finished yet. We've done enough, haven't we? I'll head home first. With that, he left the room. As I got up to follow him, someone grabbed my arm. Startled, I almost fell backward. Is something wrong? I turned around to see Nichols looking serious. I have something important to discuss. What? I followed him to another room. Still worried about Thomas. So, what is it? This is very hard to say, but Mr. Thomas is actually... His words made me collapse to my knees on the spot. At the same time, a burning desire for revenge against Thomas ignited within me. I am Ellen, a very ordinary office worker. I am 32 years old this year. Now, I am living a peaceful, if ordinary, life with my husband, Thomas, whom I married 2 years ago. Thomas and I were high school classmates and moved away from our hometown after graduation. Ellen. It's been a while. Thomas? When did you come back here? I just got back last week. We ran into each other by chance after work one day. So, you've been here all this time, Ellen. Why did you come back here? There was a slight pause. Well, the atmosphere over there didn't suit me. What does that even mean? After that, we started hanging out once a week. Since we had a good relationship to begin with, it was fun. And about 2 months after our reunion. One evening, as we were having drinks after work. Hey, why don't we live together? What? I really enjoy being with you, Ellen. Is that okay? I didn't hesitate to say yes at that moment. Being together more made me want to spend even more time with him. Soon after, we found a new place and started living together. Looking forward to this. Same here. I had never lived with someone before, so I was a little excited. It was fun, but there was something that bothered me. I had never asked Thomas what he did for a living. I had asked him before. What? My job? Oh, I'm helping out my colleague. Oh. Specifically? Well, various things. Anyway, let's go eat. I know a great place. Oh, okay. He dodged the question skillfully, and I never got a clear answer. As work got busier, I forgot about it. About a year of living together passed. And one day, when I got home from work. Welcome back. Have a seat. What? Following Thomas's instructions, I sat down and saw a table set with drinks and a lavish meal. What's this for? It's not my birthday or anything. Then, Thomas pulled out a small box from his pocket. Seeing it, my heart raced with anticipation. Will you marry me? I think it's about time. Yes. I'd love to. But this turned out to be the wrong choice for me. I was over the moon about being proposed to. Then, Thomas looked apologetic. Is something wrong? Could we wait to have the wedding? A wedding? Well, I'm not really particular about it, so we can think about it later. Really? Thank you. The fact that I could be with Thomas as his wife was more important to me than the wedding. The next day, we went to the courthouse and got our marriage certificate. We were officially married. I was thrilled about our new life together. But I noticed something strange 2 weeks after we got married. I'm home. You're late. Oh, yeah. There was a lot going on. He felt like a stranger. But that wasn't the only thing. Even when I spoke to him, he seemed distant and only gave half-hearted responses. Hey? Are you listening? Huh? Sorry, I wasn't listening. I'm just really tired. I'm going to bed. Oh, okay. Thomas went to the bedroom, clearly preoccupied with something else. Then, I noticed a small bag left where he had been sitting. Thinking he might need it, I went to give it to him. You dropped this. Thomas, who was lying down, snatched it from me with an inhuman speed. What was that? I was too stunned to move. He glared at me with a face I'd never seen before. Did you look inside? Inside? No, I didn't. Good. Thanks. He lay back down. I returned to the living room, but the bag stayed on my mind. I couldn't muster the courage to ask more after seeing his expression. The next day, he acted as if nothing had happened. Oh, by the way, I'll be late again tonight. What about dinner? I don't need it. That night. He didn't come home even after midnight. Since I had work the next day, I decided to go to bed. Then, I heard the front door open and a thud. Rushing to the entrance, I found Thomas collapsed. Are you okay? Huh? Thomas was so drunk he couldn't even speak properly. There was a strange sweet, almost pungent smell coming from him. I managed to get him to the living room and gave him some water. He had never been in such a bad state from drinking before, so I considered calling an ambulance. The bag. What? The bag? After a while, he kept muttering the bag like a mantra. I realized it was the one I saw before. I searched his bag. Just as I was about to take out the bag. What are you doing? Startled by his sudden clear shout, I dropped the bag in surprise. What do you think you're doing? You said the bag. Don't do things on your own. I was getting annoyed at being unfairly blamed. You said the bag, didn't you? What's even in it? It's none of your business. If it's so important, why don't you keep it in a safe or something? The next moment, I felt pain in my cheek. I touched my cheek, not understanding what had happened. When I looked at Thomas, his eyes were bloodshot. It's because you keep meddling. If you do this again, it won't end with just this. The intensity of his anger left me speechless. He stood up, staggered, and left the house. I was left alone, rubbing my slapped cheek. After that, he started coming home less and less. He would return when I was leaving for work. Oh, heading to work now? Good luck. Are you off today? Huh? Oh, yeah, it's my day off. And he was always drunk. There was also a strong, unfamiliar smell around him. I had smelled it before. It seemed like perfume, but I couldn't place it at the time. One day, amidst these ongoing, tense days, Thomas made a surprising suggestion. We barely talked anymore, yet he had a strange smile on his face. As a way to make up for everything, how about we have a wedding ceremony? A ceremony? Yeah, a wedding. We never had one, right? Well, that's true. But why now all of a sudden? I was cautious because there had been no indication of this. Because it's a nice thing to do. Why not? Okay. I was afraid of what might happen if I refused. Then let's go look at venues this Sunday. I should have been happy, but Thomas's overly friendly and kind demeanor left me confused. Sunday came. So, where are we going? Just follow me. Without knowing where we were headed, I simply followed Thomas. We arrived in front of a building displaying wedding dresses. Here? Yeah, it's a nice place, right? Let's go in. Inside, there were various wedding dresses on display. Seeing all this, I couldn't help but feel a bit excited. Then, a woman approached us. "Would you like a tour?" As I hesitated. "Yes, please." "Certainly. This way, please." We moved to another room where they explained the wedding plans. I was unsure about which plan to choose, but Thomas was happily chatting with the planner. Feeling a bit annoyed, I turned to Thomas. "Hey, what about this one?" "Oh, it's nice. But I'd go with this one." "But it's expensive." "Really? Then maybe the middle plan." I hadn't expected much, but Thomas actively gave his opinions. It started to feel like we might have a good wedding. That day ended with us just deciding the rough outline. On the way back, he seemed to be in a good mood. Feeling hopeful, I tried talking to him. "Hey, about the wedding dress." "Yeah." "Which one do you think is best?" "Yeah." No matter how many times I tried, his response was always yeah. I wondered what had happened to his earlier enthusiasm. "Are you even listening?" I asked more firmly this time. "I'm busy right now. Don't talk to me." But he was just fiddling with his phone, not looking busy at all. Yet he acted like I was the one at fault. The thought of divorce crossed my mind. While I had a strong desire for the wedding, I also wanted to show my parents me in a wedding dress. Torn between these feelings, I realized Thomas didn't care about any of this. "We have another meeting next week. You'll come, right?" "Yeah, I'll be there." And we returned to our usual, gloomy routine. I couldn't wait for a week to pass. That day, I felt sick and had to leave work early. All I wanted was to get home and lie down. "Huh? Why are you home?" "That's what I should be asking you. What happened to work?" "I wasn't feeling well, so I left early." "Then you should have told me." "I didn't think you'd be home." Then, I noticed something. There were 2 cups on the table. When I left this morning, they weren't there. Did someone come over? Huh? No, no one came over. But there are 2 cups here. Thomas looked like he had been caught. It seemed like he was trying to come up with an excuse. "Oh, my coworker stopped by." "But you just said no one came over." Thomas seemed increasingly frustrated. "I said it was a coworker. Can you just drop it?" I tried to press further, but I felt dizzy and unsteady on my feet. "You came home because you weren't feeling well, right? You should go to bed." With that, Thomas carried me to the bedroom. My fever must have gone up, because as soon as I was laid in bed, I fell into a deep sleep. Huh? When did I fall asleep? I looked at my phone, and it was already past 1 a.m. I had been asleep for nearly 6 hours. I headed to the living room and found Thomas there. "Are you feeling better?" "Yeah." "Don't push yourself. Do you want something to eat?" After what happened earlier, I didn't know what to say. Thomas spoke kindly, as if nothing had happened. "I'm sorry about earlier. Work's just been stressful. But really, it was just a coworker. Please believe me." He seemed like a different person. Okay, I understand. I forgave him. Looking back, maybe I shouldn't have. But at that moment, his kindness meant the world to me. Especially since I had little experience with relationships, he was so important to me. "You should get some more sleep. It's still the middle of the night." "Yeah, you're right. Good night." "Good night." I went back to bed and quickly fell asleep again. She didn't suspect anything. She's really a fool. I thought I heard Thomas talking to someone, but I soon drifted off again. "We have another wedding planning session on Sunday. Are you okay with that?" "Yeah." It's fine. Then, during our final planning session, something happened. Isn't the usual person here? I'm sorry, but they are off today. My name is Nichols. I'll be your planner today. Oh, I see. Nice to meet you. I glanced at Thomas and he seemed a bit annoyed. Is everything all right? Yeah. Let's just get this over with. As we went through the details, Thomas was just playing with his phone, not really participating. It made me question what the wedding was for. As the meeting was wrapping up. So, shall we proceed like this? Yes, thank you. I asked Thomas for his agreement. Is this okay? Whatever. You decide. Huh? That's not helpful at all. My excitement deflated quickly. Just keep it simple. Simple? What's simple? Not too fancy. It doesn't need to be extravagant. What? We've already made all the plans. Now you want to change them? You said you didn't want anything expensive, right? Originally, it was Thomas who suggested having the ceremony. But now, I can't believe his attitude. As the tension grew, our planner Nichols made a suggestion. If we lower the grade of the meal, we can increase the number of events. He politely offered an alternative, but he showed no interest. Let's go with that. It's fine, right? Yeah. I almost sighed but held it in. Then, Thomas suddenly stood up. Where are you going? We're not done yet. It's enough already, isn't it? I'm heading home first. Wait! But Thomas ignored me and left. What is wrong with him? I'm sorry. I'll bring him back. As I stood up to chase Thomas, my arm was grabbed. I nearly fell backward from the sudden pull. Yes. When I turned around, the planner Nichols, who had been smiling earlier, now had a serious expression. I have something important to discuss. Important? What is it? This isn't the place for it. Please come with me. Following Nichols' lead, I moved to another room. I was concerned about Thomas leaving, but this seemed more urgent. Nichols began to speak slowly. His expression looked almost apologetic. So, what's the matter? It's very hard to say, but actually, Mr. Thomas has been up to something not good. Not good. Last week, when we were fitting the outfits, I overheard a conversation. I was curious and went to check. He seemed hesitant to continue. Seeing this, I felt I needed to be brave and listen. Please, tell me. All right. When I looked, he was talking to one of our employees, Ingram, who was handling your case until last week. What? I don't think their relationship is recent. They even kissed. What? I fell to my knees at his words. Why? Though I'd suspected infidelity before, I never imagined it would be with our wedding planner. No, I couldn't have noticed. Are you okay? Yes. He offered me a hand. And it wasn't just the secret he was hiding. At that moment, a desire for revenge ignited within me. Thank you for telling me. What will you do? Of course, revenge. But don't worry. I won't trouble you. I went straight home. I called Thomas on the way, but he didn't answer. He wasn't home, so I waited for him. And then, I saw that bag on the table. Seeing it, I thought this was my chance. An hour later. Why are you so flustered? Oh, it's nothing. The moment he got home, he was restless and looking for something. Of course, I knew what it was. Is this what you're looking for? You had it? Honestly, I was scared, but my anger was stronger. I know what this is. The wedding planner Nichols told me. Nichols? Who's that? The person who handled us today. She heard you talking with Ingram. What did she hear? Everything. About you kissing Ingram and planning to swindle me by pretending we were going to have a wedding. Earlier, I heard from Nichols that Thomas and Ingram were planning to steal money together. Upon hearing this, he began to tremble slightly. So, you found out, huh? What are you laughing at? Even if you know now, you can't escape from me. I held my mobile phone in my hand, ready to call the police if necessary. There's no use threatening me anymore. Just give it to me. No way. Do you really think it's okay to get involved in something like this? Shut up. Just hand it over. Thomas, clearly frustrated to the max, threw something at me from nearby. Luckily, his aim was off, and it didn't hit me. Then I called the police. Hey! What are you doing? Of course, I'm calling the police. You're the one who can't escape, Thomas. You should run away, or do you want this? Don't mess with me. He tried to come at me, but tripped over the mess he had made in the room. Taking advantage of this, I ran into the bathroom. I locked myself in the bathroom and called the police. Open up! There's no way I'm opening this door. Thomas desperately tried to open the door, pounding and kicking it. Even though I was in the bathroom, I wasn't sure how long it would be safe. Then, I quietly checked the contents of the bag. There were still some uncertainties about what Nichols had told me. Sure enough, inside were dried plant fragments and some unfamiliar apparatus. There was also a sweet smell coming from it. I realized this was the smell I had noticed from him before. After about 15 minutes, I heard the front door open and someone entered. It seemed the police had arrived. Hey! Let go! Don't touch me! Outside the bathroom, there seemed to be a struggle between the police and Thomas. Then, everything went quiet, and there was a knock on the door. Are you okay? Yes. We've restrained him, so you can come out now. As I exited the bathroom, I saw Thomas in the living room, surrounded by police officers, looking downcast. I handed the bag Thomas had to the police. This is what he was carrying. Thank you. The police checked the contents and contacted someone. Soon after, more police arrived. Is this Mr. Thomas's item? Yes, he always carried it around like it was important. Then, right in front of Thomas, they began testing the contents. They put some of the plant fragments into a test tube, and it changed from clear to a purplish-blue color. At 5:34 p.m., you are being arrested for violation of drug use. Right before my eyes, Thomas was handcuffed. Strangely, I didn't feel sad at all. In fact, I could only think that he deserved it for deceiving me all this time. You've ruined everything. Remember this. I never thought you were such a scumbag. You deserve to rot in prison. You just wait. I'll be back. Good luck with that. And with that, Thomas was taken away by the police. I felt foolish for not acting sooner, even though I had noticed something was wrong. But now, I was free. I might not be able to have the wedding, but it's much better than continuing this life. What should I do now? First, I guess I should get a divorce. There's no time to wallow in sentimentality. There's still a lot to do. A few days later, I was on my way to the police station. The police had contacted me, and I needed to be tested as well. Of course, the result was negative. You can visit him now if you'd like. What would you like to do? Of course, I will. All right. I'll get back to you with the schedule details. I felt a bit excited. I was eager to know how things had progressed since then. And finally, a week later, The chance to meet face to face arrived. When I entered the visitation room, Thomas was a shadow of his former self. Good to see you. You look well. This is what you call looking well? So, why are you here? It's just an update. I'm currently finalizing our divorce. Also, I'm filing for alimony. Alimony? Yes. Because you were cheating, remember? Do you have proof? You'll find out soon enough. That's all I wanted to say. Get out of here! As I left the visitation room, I couldn't help but laugh. How far someone can fall after getting involved with drugs. Later, I heard from the police that the wedding planner, Ingram, had been arrested. They found the same kind of bag in her room. During interrogation, she was quite talkative, saying Thomas had introduced her to marijuana. In the end, she even admitted to the affair. The mystery of the 2 glasses was also solved. Now, I have to proceed with the alimony claim. The alimony claim was successfully recognized. Thanks to my lawyer, the divorce was finalized, and I was finally free. Since I originally leased the apartment, I terminated the contract and disposed of all of Thomas's belongings. With this, I'm considering moving. But before that, there's one place I need to go. It's been a while, Miss Nichols. You are. Thank you so much for your help last time. It was all thanks to you, Nichols. I didn't really do anything. You really saved me. And what about your husband? Of course, we divorced. If I ever plan to get married again, I'll come here. With that, I left the store. I later learned that before coming back here, he had been arrested for drugs again. Because of this, he received a prison sentence and is now behind bars. Knowing this, I can't help but laugh. I hope he never gets out. From now on, I will start a new life in a new place. Even though I am alone, I don't feel lonely. In fact, I'm looking forward to it immensely. My younger sister, Nancy, noticed me at the airport and smiled as she said, "I wish you could have come to my wedding, Rolla." Her words dripped with sarcasm, and there was a reason for it. She had claimed she was pregnant with my husband Ben's child and had taken him away from me. Marrying a pilot must be a point of pride for her. Especially since she had taken him from her nagging sister while we were living together, the sense of superiority must be immense. Like a spiteful jab at me, they had a grand wedding and bragged about their plans to move overseas. Now, Nancy was waiting for a flight to go abroad, supposedly to scout for their new home. She was carrying a large rolling suitcase and a duffel bag, clearly in high spirits. On the other hand, I came to the airport almost empty-handed, ready to leave as soon as I finished the task I had mentioned over the phone. I made sure to travel light so I could head home quickly once it was done. Maybe she wanted to see me sulking, but I wasn't just going to stand there silently. I knew Ben's character better than anyone, having been with him far longer. Feigning indifference, I handed Nancy an envelope containing some crucial information. "Here, you forgot this," I said, presenting it as a gift. "My name is Rolla. I come from a coastal area, and I'm a 40-year-old housewife married to a pilot. We don't have children, so it's just the 2 of us living together. My husband Ben is 47, and we met at a party arranged by a mutual friend. At the time, I had just left my parents' home and was in my mid-20s, not really thinking about marriage, just attending various parties to meet new people. I believed that the more men I met, the better my chances of building a happy family. I was never one to fall in love at first sight, so I tended to prioritize personality over looks when dating, though I had a weakness for persistence. Ben's first impression was that of a man familiar with women. He was good at keeping the mood lively and seemed very friendly, though there was a hint of ulterior motives in his attentiveness. I didn't expect to have anything to do with him in the future, but life is full of surprises. Ben persistently pursued me, and after one dinner together, I found myself in a relationship, which has now lasted over 10 years. Friends who have known me for a long time often say they never imagined I would end up with someone like Ben, and I feel the same way. True to my initial impression, Ben often spent time with other women before we got married. When I confronted him about his infidelity, "The only one I love is you, Rolla," he would say to deflect my accusations. I wasn't initially inclined to get involved with any man, so each time I would just say, "Please stop cheating on me," without imposing any real penalties. Despite this, our relationship was surprisingly enjoyable. He always took time off to celebrate anniversaries and birthdays with me, and even after we started living together, I never felt like household chores were dumped on me. On weekends, he would clean without me asking, and since I enjoyed cooking, it was never a burden. In fact, I found it fun, and he usually took care of the dishes. If it weren't for the cheating, I would say I found a really great person. So when he proposed, I felt the benefits outweighed the drawbacks and accepted. Of course, I won't tolerate any more cheating behavior if we're getting married, I made sure to tell him firmly. The wedding was grand, thanks to Ben's income and savings, much higher than an average office worker's. He allowed me to wear any expensive dress I wanted, and the food and wedding cake were top-notch, making it a lavish wedding. I remember my family being very happy, which made me glad. My sister Nancy kept saying, "Rolla, I'm so jealous," as she watched me in my beautiful dress, dreaming of her own wedding day. However, not even a few years after that happy wedding, Ben started cheating again. We lived in an apartment complex with many residents, and our place was surrounded by nosy neighbors who loved gossip. "I saw your husband with another woman." The news always reached me quickly. In such times, I would line up air fresheners at the entrance, urging Ben to confess. Even if he admitted to it, he didn't change his behavior, and I didn't expect him to. Strangely, I never felt the urge to divorce him. Whether that's good or bad, I don't know, but for now, all I do is repeatedly tell him not to cheat anymore. One late summer day, after seeing Ben off and hanging up the laundry, the doorbell rang. It was too early for a delivery, so I checked the intercom, and there was my sister Nancy with a large rolling suitcase. I quickly said through the screen, "I'll open it now," and hurried to finish hanging the laundry. Even though she's my sister, I didn't want her to see all the signs of everyday life. Nancy and I have a significant age gap. I'm 40, and Nancy is 27, a 13-year difference. It's more like an aunt-niece relationship than sisters. After a little time had passed, I finished hanging the laundry and opened the door to welcome her. "Why did you come suddenly? And with such a large suitcase?" "I quit my job and couldn't stay at home anymore." She explained that she had been kicked out because she couldn't pay rent after quitting her job. According to her, last October, she was transferred to a new department where her new boss, a female employee, treated her harshly. Only she was given the cold shoulder, and despite her efforts, she was frequently scolded for being slow at work. Recently, she hadn't been given any tasks to do. She told me, a bit breathlessly, that she asked the HR department for a transfer again but was rejected, so she submitted her resignation. I felt a bit sorry for her, remembering how happy she was when she got the job offer in the city, only to leave after more than 4 years because of interpersonal issues. Nancy has always been a bit spoiled but generally liked by older people, so this was unusual for her. It just goes to show there are all kinds of people. I quit that company on my own terms. After quitting at the end of May this year, she hadn't saved any money, so she couldn't pay the rent and got evicted. Her salary was slightly above the average for someone in their 20s, but it's baffling how she could end up with zero savings. I wondered if she had been buying expensive cosmetics and branded goods. I've always been worried about her impulsive and reckless behavior, and seeing that she hasn't grown out of it even as an adult, I felt a bit exasperated. By now, she should be independent and responsible for her actions, but what to do? "So, what are you going to do now?" "If you don't have a place to live, you should either return home or find a job that offers room and board. There are many things you need to do." It doesn't seem like she's looking for a new job, and as her older sister, I need to know what she's planning to do. Just as I was thinking that, Rolla, let me stay for a while. What? I was quite shocked because I never imagined that at this age, I would end up living with my sister again. Of course, I understand that staying in this city is the most convenient option for Nancy instead of returning home. If she went back home, our parents would interrogate her, and she would have to travel back to her hometown. If she wants to continue living in the city, it's natural to avoid going back home. However, it's not something I can decide alone, so I have to wait for Ben to come back. Let's talk to Ben first. Okay. Please. I wish she would try to handle things on her own a little more. Contrary to my feelings, Ben came home and immediately agreed to let Nancy stay after hearing her situation. I wasn't enthusiastic, but since Ben had approved, I had no choice but to accept it. I decided to let Nancy use the guest room we have for unexpected visitors and showed her to the room. And so, our life with the three of us, Ben, Nancy, and me, began. Although Nancy, the freeloader, voluntarily helped with meals and chores, she showed no sign of looking for a new job. I can't have her thinking she can stay indefinitely. Since Nancy has no savings, we are essentially supporting her with our finances, and I don't want her to take it easy. Is it mean of me to think this way? I want to return to our life as a couple as soon as possible, so I asked her, "Have you found a job yet?" "Well," she replied vaguely. As Ben was away at work, the time I used to have to myself was now occupied by Nancy, and I began to find her presence increasingly annoying. Having someone else around during the time I used to enjoy freely by myself feels like a greater intrusion than I imagined. There's always someone around, and I have to be considerate, so it's far from relaxing. While I can tolerate cooking more food since cooking is my hobby, the extra work in every other aspect is bothersome. Occasionally, when I checked the guest room, I'd see her watching streaming videos or eating snacks from the pantry, living a quite lazy lifestyle. Recently, she hasn't even been helping with the chores, and day by day, my anger was building up. Soon, it will be a month since Nancy started staying with us, but there's no sign she's looking for a new job. Unable to stand it any longer. "When are you going to start working?" I knocked on the open door of the guest room and asked in a slightly harsh tone. Nancy, without even looking away from the movie she was watching online, said, "I know, but..." and continued eating her snacks. At that moment, a switch flipped inside me. "How about showing some effort in looking for a job?" Nancy, startled by my raised voice, paused the movie and looked at me. "Could you please change your sloppy lifestyle? This isn't your home." Unable to contain my rising emotions, I blurted out the words I had been holding back for the past month at Nancy. After saying it, I regretted not being calm, but those feelings were blown away by Nancy's next words. I said, "I get it. You're my big sister, so take care of me." I wondered why I had to take care of my adult sister, and as I was about to speak further, I paused and took a deep breath to calm down. I thought I knew Nancy's selfishness well, but it had worsened with adulthood. Thinking that nothing I said would get through to Nancy. "If you're just going to be lazy, then leave," I told her in a low voice before leaving the guest room. From then on, her lazy behavior escalated. She started using the guest room as if it were her own, eating the snacks I had bought without throwing away the trash, and leaving her clothes and used items lying around. Every time I saw Nancy's slovenly behavior, I would reprimand her, but she would argue back, leading to frequent arguments. I was fed up with living under this stress. Then one day, I ran into our neighbor Kate at the supermarket and heard an unbelievable story. "Hey, I saw Ben and Nancy in town last Sunday." Thinking it was unusual for Nancy to go out, I waited for Kate to continue, who leaned in and said, "And they were really close, like..." Just as I was thinking why she would notice such things, Kate dropped a bombshell. "I think they might be involved romantically." I tried to take it with a grain of salt, considering Kate's love for gossip, but her confidence bothered me. For the time being, I smiled and said, "Thanks for letting me know," before parting ways with her. Even a philanderer like Ben should understand the consequences of getting involved with his wife's sister. Until then, I still wanted to believe that Ben maintained certain boundaries with women. A few days later on a holiday, as I went to get the mail in the entrance hall, I was approached by Susan, who lived on the same floor, and she brought up Ben and Nancy again. Yesterday, I saw Ben and Nancy driving together. They seem really close. Unlike Kate, Susan didn't seem to be probing into a romantic relationship, but rather commenting on the family's closeness with a kind smile. However, I had been out meeting a friend yesterday, and Ben was supposed to be at work, so Nancy should have been home alone. Susan knew Ben's car, so she must have really seen them. I thanked Susan politely and hurried back to the apartment, calling Ben and Nancy into the living room. After taking a deep breath to calm myself, I asked in a composed tone, "Did you two go out together yesterday?" Ben, showing no sign of guilt, "Yeah," casually said. "I took Nancy to the employment office." "You've been telling her to get a job, right?" Ben said, to which Nancy added, "Yeah, he just gave me a ride." Matching his tone, so I decided to drop the issue for now and brought up what Kate had mentioned. "By the way, a neighbor mentioned that you two seemed pretty close." Ben, crossing his arms, "What's that about?" said, "She's your sister-in-law, so of course, you should be nice to her." When he took that indignant attitude, as if he was the wronged party. "Is that all you wanted to say?" she said and returned to her room. When I looked at Nancy, she turned her face away awkwardly and then went back to the guest room. I felt something was off, but I couldn't get any information out of either of them. After that, life continued with Nancy lounging around in the guest room, not even trying to find a job. I got so tired of arguing with her about getting a job that I minimized our interactions and avoided her as much as possible. On the surface, it might have seemed like we were living peaceful days. Then, about 2 years later, I was in my room getting ready to go shopping when Nancy suddenly called me to the living room. She had a slightly triumphant look on her face, so I thought she was going to tell me she'd found a job. "I'm pregnant." But instead, she sat me down on the sofa and said, I couldn't understand what she meant. "Pregnant? What do you mean?" I asked again. "I mean, I'm pregnant with Ben's child." It felt like a blow to the head. I remembered Kate's words from 2 years ago. I couldn't believe that Nancy and Ben had actually gotten involved. Seeing how shaken I was, Nancy seemed to relish it and added, "Ben said he'll take responsibility and marry me." She looked down at me triumphantly. "Ben is mine now," he declared. That night, when Ben got home, I demanded an explanation. He apologized deeply. "I want to raise the child," he said. I had secretly hoped he would deny it, so his response confirming it was hard to accept. That night in bed, I kept thinking about what to do next, but I decided to stop and sleep, hoping that I'd come up with a good solution the next day. The next morning, I woke up early and opened my computer to search. I wanted to look up everything, from the compensation I could get in a divorce due to his infidelity to what would happen with our apartment. The thought of him not only being with another woman but also getting her pregnant made divorce the only option in my mind. I found that a downloadable divorce form would suffice, so I downloaded the PDF and went to a convenience store to print it out. As I left the house, I felt like Nancy was watching me from her room, but I didn't turn around. After taking care of things at the store, I came home and shut myself in my room. I checked to make sure I had all the necessary documents for the divorce and filled out the form. Since he wanted to raise the child, it meant he wanted to divorce me, so it should be easy to settle without going to court. I summarized the terms on paper, and with the filled-out divorce form, I knocked on Ben's room door. He opened the door and let me in immediately. I got him to agree to the divorce, the $30,000 compensation I demanded, and the sale of our apartment. I wondered how he and Nancy planned to support themselves, but I didn't care enough about the two traitors to change my demands. After the apartment was sold, we started living separate lives, but soon Nancy called me with a snide tone. We're going to have an even more luxurious wedding than Rolla had, just the two of us. I honestly didn't care at all and said, "Good for you." But Nancy continued, "We're moving abroad too." She sounded so excited that it was palpable even over the phone. She probably thinks she took Ben from me. It's funny to think she's going on a trip before moving overseas without really knowing Ben. Actually, Ben was fired 2 months before Nancy announced her pregnancy. At that time, he still had enough savings to get by, so I didn't feel the need to tell Nancy, and it seems Ben also kept it a secret. The reason, as you can guess, is a woman. He was caught having an affair with a married flight attendant and was fired for it. He also had to pay a large settlement to the flight attendant's husband. On top of that, he paid me compensation, so most of Ben's savings are likely gone. I never thought my decision to let him be, thinking he had learned his lesson, would allow me to get back at Nancy like this. Life is full of surprises. It's really foolish of her to call me with snide remarks without knowing anything. When I asked when they were leaving for their trip, Nancy said it was the day after tomorrow. "So, I'll bring over the things that got mixed up," I said and hung up. On the day of their departure, I headed to the airport and looked around for Nancy. After walking a bit, I spotted her alone in front of a cafe in the airport. Nancy noticed me and, "Rolla!" she called out, immediately following with, "Why didn't you come to the wedding?" with a sarcastic tone. I replied, "More importantly," and got to the point. "Here, this is Ben's." I handed her an envelope. "What's this?" Nancy's face changed color as she opened it. "Your husband Ben is not a pilot, he's unemployed now." Nancy started to tremble and glared at me. "Stop lying!" she shouted. "I bet there's almost nothing left of his savings." But I calmly said. I explained the whole situation to Nancy in detail. She began shouting, "I can't believe it!" drawing cold stares from passers-by as she stormed off. Really, thinking she could get happiness easily is a big mistake. I murmured to myself, feeling a bit relieved as I left the airport. After that, I used the compensation and proceeds from selling my house to open a bistro in a town away from the city, making use of my love for cooking. It's not fancy, but the locals love it, and business is decent. As for Nancy and Ben, it seems they're both having a hard time. Nancy returned to her parents' home when she gave birth, seeking help, but left the baby there and disappeared. She probably couldn't stand the scolding from her parents after hearing the whole story from me. Ben, meanwhile, was told by my parents that he couldn't see the child, and even though he hasn't found a new job, he insists on paying child support. It's unclear if he can't face reality or if he truly cares about the child, but his future looks bleak. In the end, it's not clear if Nancy and Ben have split up, but I heard they still haven't met their child, whom my parents are raising. It's sad that he wanted a child and divorced me for it, but this is the reality. I decided not to get involved with insincere people anymore. I love my current life, so I aim to continue running my bistro, loved by the local community, for a long time.